Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Tribe Talks. Really excited for today's episode and a great conversation with Griffin Bradds. Really excited to have you join me, Griffin.
Hey, Camden, man. Thanks for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
So, Griffin, I want to start off. We talked a lot about marketing
Yeah,
when we first met each other. I would love to hear your perspective on the approach. We talked about some of the folks. We're not going to badmouth anybody or call any names out, but the
yeah.
folks who have the one size fits all solution of it's like, hey, I always use Google Ads as the example of like, hey, I used Google Ads and it made my business huge, so you have to use Google Ads. I would love to hear your thought on that one size fits all solution versus the more nuanced approach. Let's say.
I'm not a big believer in the one size fits all. I'll be honest with you. I'm a big believer that not a lot of people understand what marketing is. And my journey in the marketing came because I wanted to start a gym. I just had this passion. I have a nursing background. I thought I could help people get healthy. And I had joined a coaching program, and they're like, yeah, included in this program is we'll do all your marketing. And I remember that only meant Facebook ads.
Mm-hmm.
And then apparently it only meant posting Facebook ads because the moment I had a problem, they just kind of left. And I quickly learned in business that how important marketing is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember reading a lot of books, and there's a guy named Dan Kennedy, a really famous old direct marketer. And in the book, I knew I was in trouble when I read most entrepreneurs don't realize when they open up one business, they really open up two. They open up a separate marketing agency because it's that much work. It's that hard.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I realized I really didn't have a good grasp on what marketing was. I did everything I could to kind of save that gym. But I went through a lot of money. It wasn't until the fourth agency that I found someone that actually could help. Like they could help, and they really boiled down like what is marketing, right? So you said Google ads.
I was gonna ask you to define it because I remember you asked me
Yeah,
when we talked the first time and you put me on the spot. So I want to hear your definition of marketing.
yeah. Marketing is just about getting you as many opportunities to close that sale as possible. I'm a visual person. I'm a sports guy. So if I'm out there throwing batting practice to somebody, you have the batter up there and he's the business owner, right? And that swing is their sales process. Well, he has a sales coach. He or she's probably dialed that in. Marketing is how many balls am I going to bring to that practice to give you an opportunity to enhance that skill? And that can be done a lot of different ways. Obviously through ads and social media ads, but that's also a really expensive way to try to get leads.
Mhm.
If you don't have your sales process dialed in and you don't have your follow up, like are you connecting with them speed to lead, right? You
Mhm.
could be missing them. You're just spending a lot of money just watching that money go out the door. So to me, marketing is okay, what's the best way we're going to get people to walk through your door so you have an opportunity to help them?
Mhm.
And that could be a lot of different ways. Yeah.
And talk about those different ways that you already kind of hinted at, with that fourth agent. I think you said it was the fourth agency where you
Mhm.
kind of got a little bit of that light bulb moment there.
Yeah.
For other business owners or entrepreneurs out there who might have gone through similar journeys, what do you think was the difference? Not obviously the material. Once you're working with them for a while, you can tell. But is there something like uniquely different about the folks that are that one size fits all versus the more nuanced approach, like we were saying?
I think those who really have a good grasp on marketing and the more nuanced approach, they're sitting down and getting to know what is your process, lead to close, right?
Mhm.
And walk me through that. Because one, let's say you do advertising. Well, I had a couple people that didn't even, and this was on me too, they didn't get to know like what was I selling? What was
Mhm.
my sales process? And there was a major disconnect between what was being marketed to get people in the door, between what I was trying to sell them. And keep in mind, I was learning this whole time. And I should say, I don't want people to think I'm brand new at marketing. This experience, once this my business failed, I made the commitment. I like this stuff. I've always kind of studied it. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And I invested $60,000 in my education to learn from
Mhm.
really good people how to make this work. Because there's a lot of people out there that claim to be in marketing. They're just say, oh, it's Google ads or Facebook ads. So, but no, I think they sit down they really get to know your whole process and they make sure that what's getting the attention of people to walk through your door is also matching your sales process. They look at, are you leaking money out of your funnel, right? So for
Mhm.
instance, a lot of people don't realize what a gold mine they're sitting on with old leads. And they don't call them because I don't know, you just don't think about it. And you have a list of 500 to 2,000 or something, and it's a lot of smiling and dialing. Although I do have a solution for that. But you've already paid for those leads. They're interested. You've already paid for them. So why are we not going back and prospecting on this gold mine that we're sitting on? So there's just a lot of different opportunities, but it's really about plugging up the process. I come from a process improvement develop like background. The best marketers that I know are all very process oriented, follow standard orders or standing operating procedures. And it's really just about how are we getting them in, how are we making that a smooth transition down your sales funnel, and how are we kind of wrapping that up so we're not leaking money out of our funnel. Does that make sense?
Talking about, yeah, definitely. And talking about the old leads there, I think that's such an interesting thing because, you call it a gold mine. And I think that, is a great way of putting it. The thing that I always think about is there's this, we had a guest on our podcast a while back, Eric Holtzclaw. It was great with Liger Marketing. And one of the things he talked about was this idea of it's like, you don't really get to know the effectiveness of something you're doing for like 2 years because it could just sit with somebody and they come back to you, way down the road. But as the business leader, looking at leads, there's a little bit of this shiny objects syndrome where you're like, well, I want the new leads. Like Facebook keeps giving me new leads. Those Facebook ads keep bringing people. I'm not thinking about the guy I talked to a year ago, and how he might now be ready to work with me or whatever that looks like there. Yeah. Could you talk some about the more mindset aspect of that there?
So I don't think, and I was surprised when I say I don't think a lot of people think about this. I wasn't thinking about this. When we, for instance, let's say we're doing paid ads, we want that money, right? We're paying a lot of money out in ad spend, and we really want to convert that. What we don't realize is only about 5% of people that see your ad are ready to buy right now, maybe less. But there's about 20% of people that are interested in what you do. It's just now's not the right time. So what are we doing with those people? So they're raising their hand. They're coming into your pipeline. You probably have a CRM or some sort of database of old leads, but they didn't buy because now's not the right time. Well, are we just going to rely on them to pick up the phone when it is the right time? Probably not, because when it is the right time, the next ad they see, they'll just give that person a call. So you always want to be nurturing. And a lot of people know about email nurturing or text message nurturing. Now with the advent of AI, we can have very smart conversations, right? We can have an AI chatbot that's having a very personalized conversation with that person, but even better, we have an AI voice agent that can reach out and call and say, hey, we got this offer. Would you be interested in coming in for an appointment? And we're having a lot of success with that. So there's a number of use cases where, for instance, a partner of mine, he works with roofers. And they had a database of 1,500 people. They invested in the AI voice agent. They had it start calling those 1,500 people. After the 30th appointment book, the guy said, I need you to turn it off. I can't keep up with the appointments. Now, that's just an example, right? That's not promise, but that shows you out of that 1,500, there were 30 people that were potentially going to become a new customer that month. So it's just staying in front of them. So when the time is right, you're the one person that they think of. You don't want them thinking of your competitor.
Yeah, definitely. And actually talking about those old leads there, I think one of the things that comes to mind is then they talk about booking them in again. My thought is then how, and you mentioned the voice assistant tool, which folks I call it is pretty cool. I gotta say myself, it is pretty cool. I played with it a little bit, but there is an aspect then, to me at least, where I'm like, okay, so I was on a call with them, triage call, whatever you want to call it, right? With them 2 years ago. Now I got this awesome tool from Griffin, booked them back in. Now I'm on that call again. What is the qualification process there, or how are you making sure that is a legitimate lead, not just going back to chat with Griffin again? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, at a high level, you want to present some sort of offer, right? So, let's say you're at a gym. You might want to call and say, hey, free week. You interested in a free week, or you have another promotion. Or I work with a lot of holistic health practitioners. Maybe there was a guy that I knew. He created the follow-up campaign with old leads and said, you know what, I'll just throw in he was a chiropractor. I'll throw in, I think it was the MRI for free. Immediately within 10 minutes, he he had made over $6,000 sale. It's just that people are interested, and the people that raised their hand maybe 2 years ago, they
Mhm.
were interested and they liked you well enough to raise their hand. It's just going back and just saying, okay, I don't want to forget about you. Maybe I am doing some paid ads, but let's not forget about the people that were interested, 6 months to a year or two, because they likely enjoyed talking to you. There's something about your offer that they like. So it's just
Mhm.
about making another offer to get them in the door so where you can use your sales skills to actually maybe close them and help them some way.
Oh, I got two different questions I'm bouncing around with. Okay, I'm gonna pick one. I'm curious, talking about, you said like there's something they connected with you about, whether it was something in your offer, something about you personally. What do you think is the key to finding that piece? Because I think that's an interesting thing. I had this with a couple of my early business ventures where it's like you're out there doing the thing, you're like things are going well, but it's like, what do they like? Are they liking me? Do they like the business idea? Are they liking, my ag background? Are they liking the lettuce I'm selling? What is it that they're actually connected with? What's your process for kind of teasing out that answer?
We do something called a big scary offer. And that's what I'll work with you on, right? And the big scary offer is something that's going to stop the scroll and get their attention, and probably something that they like. So my big scary offer is I'll cut $100,000 off your sales overhead and double your patient inquiries or client inquiries in under 90 days, guaranteed. And I know how I'm going to do that, but that's a scroll stopping promise, right? So
Mhm.
we would work together and say, okay, what's your big scary offer? What can we create here that we can then go back to your old leads, people who talked to you before, and say, hey, I'm offering this now. Can I book you in for an appointment? And it should be something that is gets people excited to come in to re-engage with you again. And then once you have them in your office, at that point you can try to, close them or sell them on a longer term relationship, or kind of work them up your value ladder to help them
Mhm.
more. So it's just really coming up with that. The offer, I've heard a lot of people say you can have pretty average, pretty average marketing if your
Mhm.
offer's fantastic. People will do it. You can have phenomenal marketing that won't work if your
Mhm.
offer's terrible. So a lot of it really boils down to us sitting down and saying, okay, what's that offer look like? What do you think you can do? Or, are you comfortable with this? And it's not about losing money, but like, for instance, I know how I'm going to save someone 100K in sales and increase their patient leads or their
Mhm.
number of inquiries. So it's just kind of mapping that process out. A lot hinges on the offer.
I'm glad I asked that question first, because actually this kind of feeds into my next piece there. Talking about the offer, we had a conversation on our podcast recently, and actually this hasn't come out yet, so I think this will come out before. So folks, pay attention. 10 extra team. We got one
Yeah.
of the upcoming episodes. We'll talk about this in detail. But we were talking about the idea of like putting out the free thing, the free sample, or even for, I think in this specific context, it was like the putting out the free marketing stuff, be doing a free website, these different things there. And the problem that we were talking around with that is when you put out too much free stuff, you attract the people who only want the free, and they're not actually really interested. They're just going to keep eating the free samples. They're never going to buy anything, right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts there on balancing that? Because there still is a value. You get folks in the door, right? But if they're just going to eat the free samples, doesn't do you much good. What's your thought on balancing that out?
I've had a lot of luck not using the word free. What I use is complimentary. Or, hey, you know what? Let's say I'm a doctor trying to get a new patient, or a chiropractor, or dentist. Hey, you know what? I'm offering this service. Why don't you let me go ahead and pay for your first appointment? Because I really want you to experience this. That lands differently than free. Free, people don't take seriously. But if you just switch it around to like, I'm such a big believer in this. This one's on us. We're going to pay for this appointment for you. Can you come in uh, on the 5th? Right. Once I started doing that, and this was even before I got in the market, this was my gym. It really changed. I got a lot more traction that way, and it's just playing with wording a little bit. But I don't like free.
Yeah.
It's complimentary, or I really like the, hey, why don't you let this first appointment be on us? We'll pay for it.
Hmm.
It's the same
I
concept.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense there, and I can see
Yeah.
how that kind of flips it up. Not just is it free, but then there is a cost, but I'm going to cover that cost for you because I'm
Mhm.
such a nice guy, and feels that reciprocity. I
Yeah.
like that there. The other piece with that I'm thinking about is the how do I put this? Actually, I'm gonna shift back to something else because that's something else I was
Yeah,
thinking
yeah.
about. So I'm curious what you and you talked a little bit about being process oriented. So I'm guessing it's there. But how does the nursing background and the gyms and all that? How does that kind of build into the way that you approach marketing?
So when I was a nurse, I was the very first clinician. So I worked at a hospital network in Ohio, 10,000 person network. I think it was like six hospitals, and they had started a new process improvement department. Obviously, it's staffed by industrial engineers. It's what they study, but they quickly realized that they needed clinicians because they needed someone who could translate between what the engineers were saying and what it's like to be a clinician. I was the very first clinician ever hired into that department. That's what really changed my approach to how I to work. And it's just, and if you talk to your best salespeople, your best marketers, anyone that's out there generating business, they're following a process. Now, part of that process is making it sound like if I'm meeting you for the first time, it's not it sounds like I'm coming up with it off the top of my head, but they're following a whole process to get leads into the funnel, down the funnel, filtering them out, qualifying them, and then starting to drip out, your clients there. What you're aiming to do is to set up repeatable processes. Once you can set up repeatable processes with your marketing and sales, now you have, oh, here's my conversion. For every 1,000 people that see my ad, X number will click on it. Out of that percentage or that number, X percentage will fill out the form. X percentage that fill out the form will actually make the appointment. Will actually keep the appointment. And so now you're like, oh, I just need to get this message in front of X number of people, or I need to pay this much dollars, and I should expect this much in return for my advertising. That's the goal that we're getting to. I think a lot of people, if you're not following a process, marketing can feel like a waste of money because you don't really know what you're doing. You're just kind of throwing money out there, and you don't know if you're not tracking it, if you're not tracking kind of where that's going. It can kind of feel like it could just feel like you're guessing at it. But your best sales and marketing people do not guess. They have even their sales scripts. They have a process that they're walking you through. So yeah, I'm a huge believer in process, especially with sales and marketing.
And I can see how the process, the focus on the process helps to prevent and fix a lot of those like pipeline leaks, like you were talking about.
Mhm.
Kind of, we mentioned the old leads as one and not nurturing as another. I'm curious if there's another like major leak that you tend to see. If you kind of had your top three leaks in somebody's pipeline, what's that look like?
Well, real quick, I just want to circle back on process too. So,
Yeah.
let's say we work together. Let's say Camden, you and I work together, and your marketing is driving your business growth. Now you're getting busier, and maybe you don't have time, right, to do some of the things you were doing. If you don't have a process, how are you going to train somebody else to come in and do that? You're going to have to hire somebody else, right? So, process, i.e., standard work, also allows you to train maybe a virtual assistant, or if you want to hire somebody, but also it's how you measure whether or not they're doing the job right or not. So you really need that standard work in that process. So I just wanted to kind of,
Yeah, no, I love that. I want to add something on there because I've noticed this with my businesses that also even if you ain't offloading it yet, take the time to build out that process because one, it'll help you to be better at your job and actually get things down on paper. It
yeah,
helps you so much with your job, and then it makes it easier to hand it off to somebody else. But yeah,
yeah,
I'm a big fan of going through that on your own too.
yeah, yeah. To answer your other question, I'm going to throw something out there most people aren't thinking about. Answer the phone. 62% of businesses, this is, I think you should be able to Google this, do not answer the phone every call. They're not staffed for it. So let's say I'm looking for a roof or a painter, right? Let's say I'm looking for a painter to paint the exterior of my house. And Camden, you own a really good painting business. And I call you, but you're out working. So I get voicemail. Do you think I'm going to sit and wait for you to call me back? Or do you think I'm just
Probably
going to go
not.
down the list and say whoever picks up the phone is who I'm hiring? So that's where right now, in today's day and age, people are using voice agents. So voice
Mhm.
agents aren't just setting appointments. They're not just calling leads, not just calling old leads, but they're also acting as your receptionist. So you can 24/7 a day, 24/7 every day, you have someone picking up the phone. Now, some people choose to only have that pick up when their receptionist can't answer the phone, but some people are actually transitioning to just a virtual receptionist because it can answer all the questions. We can upload FAQs. It can give all the information the receptionist can. It knows how to transfer kind of a critical, like we can call it a hot lead, or maybe someone's upset. We can transfer it to a live person.
Mhm.
But the fact of the matter is, you're picking up the phone. People lose business all the time because they're a small business. They're out doing the work. They don't have anyone there to answer the phone.
Mm. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah.
The thing that's coming to mind is we had another conversation on our podcast with Ken Schmidt, who was a executive at Harley for a while,
Mhm.
and one of the things that we talked with Ken about was this idea of getting away from value-based messaging and value-based marketing, because once you are establishing at the value, if you're only selling on value, then somebody's just going to go get the slightly cheaper option. And it's kind of this race to the floor like that. I would love to hear your thoughts on talking about value versus impact and that kind of a mix there, because I think that's a really interesting problem set for a lot of businesses.
I view value a little differently. Value should justify the price, right? And you
Mm.
should be getting 10x the value than for the price. So, for instance, if something costs $1,000, you should be getting $10,000 of value. You should be getting enough value that the price is like, yep, that might be expensive, but that's totally worth it. So it's not necessarily price driven. It shouldn't drive you to the bottom.
Mm.
Are you familiar with Russell Brunson by chance?
Somewhat, not on
Okay,
a
so
super deep level, but yeah.
he's a ClickFunnels guy. He runs a 9-figure business, and I heard him do this one time, and he just took his cell phone out. Right, we all have these, and he just went through all of his contacts that were in his cell phone, and he went through all the materials that he reads, all of his podcasts, all of his daily motivations, and
Hmm.
what he was doing, he's elevating the value. And I think he ended, but he's like, now, who would pay me $5,000 for this if you got to keep everything on here, all the contacts, everything, right? So he elevated the value for commodity. To me, that's what we're after.
Hmm.
It's not about, hey, if someone said, well, they can do Facebook ads cheaper. Okay, to me, you're not really grasping what marketing is. That's just one piece of my. Are Facebook ads even right for you? We don't know.
Mm.
I try to get value by most people are not reactivating their database. Let's go find that lost money. And when we get the new money in that we're not even expecting, at that point, let's sit down and say, do we want to kind of allocate part of that new money to business growth through new leads? I hope that's answering your question, but I have a different definition of value
Yeah,
than
and
price.
I want to get into that definition a little more actually, because I think you're right there, and I think Kid would agree with you also. It's a little bit just semantics, but the price versus value to kind of and as literal as you can get it, like as if we're writing out the Facebook ad or something, right? What would you say is the difference of communicating value versus communicating price? Because I think that people kind of tie them in together a lot of the time.
I think we've all been through those funnels now where you get to the end and they're like, and you get this and it's worth this, and you get this and it's worth this. And at the very end, it's like, you get
The
$20,000 worth of
I was
stuff.
just gonna say, Griffin, the whole like, well, I charge $10,000 for coaching, so if I give you an hour of coaching, I'm giving you $10,000. It's like, what the hell are we talking
Yeah.
about
And so
here?
they mark it out, right? And they're like, but for only $2,000 today, that's what's valued. I mean, that's a really good example of what they're doing. They're building value.
Mhm.
They're making their service worth 10x more than what they're charging for it. And
Mhm.
that's the best example I can think of values. When you go through those funnels and you see that, it's the same thing. I mean, if you and I work together, Camden, I could say, okay, this is my service fee, and just
Mhm.
flat out. Or I can say, this is my service fee, but this is what you're going to get with it. And I could just start listing and listing and listing, right?
Mhm.
And it's just people will invest in value. Um,
Mhm.
they'll pay for price, but they'll invest in value.
Mhm. I,
Yeah.
I love that. Well, Griffin, I would love for you to share just of if folks are connected with what you're saying here, how can they work with you? How can they get set up with the voice assistant and clear out all those old leads and rebook them and all that good stuff you got going on there?
Yeah, so go to xfactormarketingsolutions.com, and it's all one word. And I'm revamping my site right now, so I'm actually meeting with the developers later today. Once it's finished, there'll be a demo section, and you can demo both the chatbot and the voice AI. I would do that because right now, especially the voice AI, that's a real competitive advantage. People have heard about it, but a lot of them, there are ones out there that aren't, like, for instance, I know of a big one that doesn't make outbound calls. And people say, well, it's not ready yet. No, ours is. So, and so what we talk about a lot is over the next 18 months, for us, it's like, yeah, it's like a blue ocean, right? Because people are like, whoa. I mean, you even said it. You trialed it. You're like, yeah, I got to learn more about this. But after the 18-month mark, most people are going to probably start having it. So the way I talk to business owners, I'm like, okay, over the next 18 months, so I just said that from my perspective. But for your perspective, you have a blue ocean. Likely none of your competitors have the speed to lead that you can have, right? Launching this thing. They probably don't have the efficiency to go back and really dig into their gold mine, reacting to their database. They probably are paying a receptionist or a salesperson when they could reduce that overhead, or they're just missing leads. And you just think about how many calls, like if you got 10 calls, how many of those would become clients? And if it's two, and how much is a client worth you? If it's $2,000 for every 10 calls, you're missing 4,000. So, you know what I mean? So there's an opportunity right now for small business owners to really get a competitive advantage in their industry. Otherwise, in 18 months, you're going to be buying the same thing just trying to keep pace.
One more piece on that, and talking about like the broad application there, I think is really good. Who is the best person for you? Who is that like ideal? Like, I love working with this type of business. You thought roofers earlier. Are you just big on roofing, or what's the deal there?
I mean, yes, it's always important to niche down. So if you go to my social medias, right, on Facebook and LinkedIn, it's really geared around health, like holistic providers. And that just comes from my nursing background. And the reason I've niched down on that is just because I'm a big believer in holistic healthcare. And I view it as kind of a win-win-win, all right? So for every practice I sign up, that's a win for me. But for every new client, patient I get for them, that's a win for them and their community. But it's also a win for the community that they're part of, and a win for that person, because I'm a firm believer that they're better off going to a provider that's going to look at the whole person, not just put a Band-Aid on something. We're going to get to the root cause. So that's why I do most of my social media organic marketing around that. But honestly, right now, especially with these AI agents, I think any business owner should really be taking a look at it. And the way the use cases where you can get implemented pretty quickly, it's not overly complex. So I'd say any small business owner who hears this should check me out. But yeah, if you go to my social media, my niche, my passion in life is healthcare. I'm a total life sciences biology nerd. It's what I read for fun. It's what I watch on TV. It's just me. I'm a nurse by trade. So.
Oh, I love it. Well, Griffin, thank you so much for sharing all those awesome insights. And folks, at the very least, go play with that AI tool a little bit, because it's pretty cool.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. So, hey, Camden, man, how are you doing? Good
Doing
seeing you
great,
again.
Griffin. How about yourselves?
I'm doing
great seeing you.
good. So I know you and I connected a couple weeks ago. We connected on Facebook and had a really good, first call. And I think I think we're gonna be together for a bit, kind of networking and stuff. And I think we can really help each other out. But I wanted you to just talk a little bit about Tribe and Purpose. Can you just explain for those of us who don't know what it is? What is it? What do you do? How do you help?
Yeah, thank you for that, Griffin. And what Tribe and Purpose does, real simple leadership development. Otis and I, small team, we both are just leadership nerds. We love what we do. We love conversations like this and just sharing that knowledge with folks, and really just helping people to become better leaders. We strongly believe that great leaders help to create great organizations create great communities. And if you can have great communities, that's our way of making the world a little bit of a better place, while all just focusing on our skill set, what's inside of our control. And, as far as the leadership stuff goes, we love it so much. We love teaching people and just helping them to be more effective, because there's such a gap in leadership. There's so many people out there who have the title, but they don't have the skills. And, I'm fortunate enough, I already mentioned Otis, and folks who don't know, and this will be on our YouTube channel also, so those folks will know, but for folks on your channel, don't know. Otis is my dad, and so I naturally got a lot of that stuff from him over the years. And then I got into the professional world and realized how crappy most leaders were, or really that they weren't leaders for the most part. They were just bosses. And I really want to try to help to affect change by helping those people. If they're genuine people who want to get better, then that's great. I can help them with it. If they're not very genuine and they, just want that title and all that kind of stuff, well, then, hey, I can help their boss to figure out how to reposition them somewhere where they're more effective. But just, leaders can make such an impact on people. And I think, wherever you can make that impact, it's a powerful thing.
Awesome, man. So many questions off that. So one, I've always been curious, and you're the expert to ask. How would you define, or what's the difference between a boss and a leader?
Yeah, to me, and this is one I kind of talk about it usually in like leadership versus management. I think that's really the same conversation to me.
Mhm.
But I'll preface that with their management is another skill set, and you do need to be able to manage people. That is an important thing inside of a business, inside of a team. But to me, a boss is somebody who just wants you checking the boxes. It's just making sure, like, hey, Griffin, did you hit your 5 KPIs today? Okay, you hit those. Awesome. Good job. And it's this very transactional relationship where, like I said, they're just looking for you to check those boxes. They're just checking the boxes. To me, leadership, and folks who use the term transformational leadership, I think that's a little bit redundant because to me, that's what leadership is. It's having that vision for the team, for everyone inside of your team, and helping them to transform into that and building themselves forward with that. I think a lot of bosses are just transactional. And again, I don't mean that they're necessarily bad people. There's bad people out there, don't get me wrong. But there's also a lot of good people who don't have those skill sets. Leadership is a skill. Just like I said, management is a skill. If you don't have the skills, then it's not really your fault for not doing that at a high level, right? And, that's where we love to help people is to help to teach those skills. But I think it really just comes down to a leader has a deeper level of care for that team. And then they also have a better ability for vision casting. I think that leaders see that vision of what the team can be. And then not only do they see it, but they can sell it to the rest of the team and get people on board with it and get them to commit to that transformation. Because that transformation takes a lot of work and a lot of persistence. And you're gonna hit roadblocks over and over and over again. And it's a leader who can maintain that optimism to keep the team pushing towards that. Whereas a boss is great if you just want to make sure that we're building widgets and that we get enough widgets done in that day. Bosses are great at that. Managers are great at that. But a leader is going to change that organization. That's the way I would define those two.
Nice. I like that. So you've obviously talked to a lot of people. What would you say your top 2 or 3 things are that you're finding out there that a lot of people don't know that you wish they did? Or, you know what I mean? Like, what are the top corrections that or guidance that you're giving them?
Yeah, I think there's two pieces that come to mind. One, we like to say that the leader, when we talk about transparency, a lot of it's kind of like a buzzword nowadays. I think that a leader should be a filter of information. It does not mean that you need to be completely transparent on every little thing, but a leader should be able to have the intelligence and the emotional intelligence of knowing what they need to tell their team or not. And I'll tell you a quick story. One of my businesses was Verbi, and we did virtual events during COVID, right? And it was a small team, just myself, one of my good friends, Norman, was my CTO, building the program out, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And there was a day where we were coming up on an event, and this is probably about a month or two before we decided to close our doors, our virtual doors, of course. But I went to him and I was like, hey, man, Norman, if we don't get these 10 sales this weekend, we're done. Mm-hmm. And guess what? Norman didn't do very good at work the rest of the week. I kind of jacked up his head, and he was so worried about the business that he couldn't do his day job, right? So there's an aspect of you want to have that transparency. You want to show people those things, but you have to be smart about it. You have to be strategic about it so that you're not distracting them from their job. Because it's not their job to worry about the leadership at the top level, where the business is going. It's your job to worry about that and then to give them the information that they need along the way. And so I think that's a big piece, is making sure that you are filtering that information and being smart about it. The other piece there kind of goes back to the vision casting that I was talking about. I think that a lot of leaders, they might have the vision, they might understand it for themselves, but they don't really do a good job of selling it to the rest of the team. One of the cool tools that we have at Tribe and Purpose, we call it the alignment matrix. And we talk about your team being aligned in purpose, vision, and mission. And then also you as the leader being aligned in that. So I understand what my purpose is. I want to help people. Okay, well then inside of Tribe and Purpose, what do we want to do at Tribe and Purpose? Well, we want to grow and create a legacy of leaders. That's how we want to help people. that aligns with my purpose. Okay, and then what is my mission right now? To have great conversations with people like you and to spread that knowledge out there, meet people, network, all that kind of stuff, and to help to spread that out. So my current mission aligns with my vision, aligns with the company's vision, aligns with my purpose on a personal level. That is a really powerful place to be. But then where it really gets even better is where you expand that to the rest of the team. So it's not just I as the CEO am aligned on a purpose level. Also my team is. My team understands their purpose and they see how I am helping them in their journey towards that purpose, towards their vision. And I think it's the part of the reason that people shy away from a bit is because it can be scary. Because if you're working for me, Griffin, and I go to you and I say, hey, take the day off. First of all, that's a scary thing. But take the day off, and I want you to go spend in some time, watch some videos on Tribe and Purpose, and I want you to define your purpose, your vision, and your mission on a personal level. And then we'll talk tomorrow. We'll bring you back in. We'll see how that aligns with the company. Well, if you come back and we're not aligned, then that's a scary thing to be as the business leader. Like, oh, I just lost one of my, top marketing guys, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if they're not aligned, then they're not the right fit for you. And you should want to help to get them to that right fit. Again, going back to leader versus boss, a boss is scared that you're going to leave. A boss is trying to keep you in that box so that you can keep building those widgets and all those things there. A leader cares about you on a personal level. Griffin, in that example, if you came to me and you said, hey, this is my purpose, this is my vision, and I'm like, ooh, that doesn't really align with what we're doing here, then let's work together and figure out the best path forward for both of us. Yeah. And that's the leadership approach there. And really just taking that understanding of each team member's vision and seeing how that aligns. And I'll add to that, there's a kind of classic example in leadership of, the top mechanic who gets promoted to management and then hates it because he just wants to work on cars. I had a guy like that on one of my farms that just wanted to work with the plants. He had no interest in being a C-suite, nothing there, management. He just wants to be at the plants all day. Well, if you understand that, if you understand the vision from the first place, now I've changed my expectations. I'm no longer putting that pressure on him to try to become management. Instead, it's like, hey, man, you just want to work at the plants? There you go. You got that. I know what your vision is there, and we're happy with it. Or even, the other example I'll throw out is a lot of times they're not going to work with you forever. And that can be scary as well. But if you understand their vision, then you can see how you contribute to it. You can work together for 5 years and then you send them off and they can go do great things somewhere else. And they had a great 5 years and you have a great relationship and all that kind of stuff. But that takes understanding. If you never have that conversation in the first place, then 5 years later, when that person leaves because they want to go chase something else, they have another passion, whatever it is, well, then you're going to feel betrayed. And you're going to have this animosity towards them. And that's, I think, the big key there to vision is how it connects all those different dots and helps people to communicate on a higher level and, really just be more effective as a team.
Nice. So do you work with, I know you probably work with C-suite and executives, C-suite and executives. Do you work with middle management or those aspiring to get into leadership as well, or?
Yeah, so we have our kind of two main programs that we like to talk about. The first is GBLP. It's the Green Beret Leadership Program named after Otis' time in the Army. And what that is, that one is for the entire team. So we'll run the C-suite through that, but it's also to build those leadership skills throughout the team. What we always like to talk about is having a team of leaders. And what that means is all of those skills I'm talking about that are so important for the C-suite, if you have a manager, if you have your mechanic who understands all of that, it can really transform your business because they take ownership over the problems. They understand the vision. They can sell the vision to the people below them, and they understand all of those different aspects. So that's what GBLP does. That's a kind of a whole team approach there because we want to build that team of leaders. And then we also just recently launched a program targeting more solopreneurs and trying to help them because at the end of the day, Griffin, this is a whole other rabbit hole. I'll tiptoe my way around here. But, entrepreneurs are not always good CEOs. You can have a beautiful idea. You could be really smart. You could be really driven, and you could not have the leadership skills, just like we were talking about. And then you build that business up, and then you're now the crappy boss that everyone hates. And so either A, you don't realize that, and people hate you, and your business isn't going to be as good, the culture is not good. Or B, you do realize that. Maybe you bring a coach like myself or Otis in to come in and say, hey, man, you're not in the right spot. The good to great analogy of the bus, right? You're not on the right seat on the bus. Sometimes that means you have to leave. And then now your baby that you just built up for 5-10 years, you're having to leave because you're not the right guy for it. And so with CEO Jumpstart, what that is the idea of building out that base of self-leadership because
Yeah.
that's the foundation in order to be a great leader. You have to lead yourself in order to be able to lead others.
Yeah.
And so it gives you that skills to be more effective as an entrepreneur, as that solopreneur leading yourself. But then also that builds out that foundation so that when the time comes and you need to step up and be a CEO, you're ready for it and you don't have to get off that bus. Because I'll tell you, I've had my handful of babies, which feels weird saying because I actually have a daughter now, but my entrepreneurial babies, and each one of those when I left, it sucked and it's hard. It's terrible. And to leave because you don't have the right skill set, I haven't been in that situation, but I can imagine that's got to be much worse of a feeling. And so if I can help folks with that and help them to avoid having to leave their baby out there with someone else, then I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on a good point, right? Entrepreneurship is a skill. It takes a certain mindset. It doesn't necessarily mean you are a good leader. And I think those of us who are entrepreneurs, we're in networking groups, and we know those people who are struggling because they're really struggling to scale because they can't let go. They can't delegate. They can't, and you can only do so much as a person. So if you want your business to scale, you need to realize, okay, I either need to learn leadership or I need to hire a leader, right? Who has the skills, who can help me scale, so I'm not trying to do it all myself. So I think it's a really, really great service that you're providing there.
And I want to kind of jump on something. You talk about the delegating there, and this is something that's so foundational to my leadership. I know I coach rugby, and one of the best things about rugby is that I don't get to control what happens in the game. I like to make fun of football coaches, and I love football. I'm a red-blooded American. All right, we're good there. But at the end of the day, a football coach, you're calling the plays. You're moving all the X's and O's. You're moving the chess pieces the entire game. You have a lot of control. Rugby is really different. Once that whistle goes, I'm not really doing much. Like, if you come out to sit in field here in Tucson, you can see me coaching. I'll yell, but they ain't hearing me. They're not making adjustments. They're busy, right? And so what it means as a leader, as a coach there, you have to give them the tools to then go make the decisions on their own. You have to delegate. And I think that is such a key piece of leadership that people miss. And if you think you're the only person who can do your job, then you're going to be the only person who can do your job.
Yeah.
If you are confident enough to let people to delegate out, let people fail so they can learn, then you're going to have a much more effective team, and they're going to trust you more as a leader. Because if you're that leader who keeps everything right here, no one's going to want to follow you, man. It's really that simple.
Awesome. Well, hey, man, I could talk all day, but before we wrap up, how do people get in touch with you? How do they learn about you? How do they find your company? How do they ask you questions?
Yeah, I think the best place to go is 10xyourteam.net. On there, you can see all of our different programs. And really, the way I like to describe it is we have our DIY, that's our podcast videos like this with Tribe Talks and things like that. They're all out there for free. So that if you either don't have the budget because you're a solopreneur who's just trying to build out those skills, you don't have a budget for a coach yet, or you're already a badass leader and you just want to get a little bit better, we got lots of stuff in that DIY branch. Then
Nice.
in the Done With You, that's the GBLP, the CEO Jumpstart that I mentioned. And then for the larger businesses who are looking for that high-level leadership, we also have some fractional COO services as well to really help those businesses to sustain that success rather than collapsing under their own weight, which is a whole another problem.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I know that. So, well, Camden, thank you. Anything that I haven't asked that you think people should know before we
I
break?
think to your point, Griffin, we could keep talking leadership and marketing all day. And no, thank you for all the great questions. I think we covered things pretty darn well.
Awesome, man. All right. You have a good day. Thanks.
You too.